Trump's relentless tariff assault on Canada is pushing America's closest ally into the arms of Asia. And Mark Carney just made a move that could change everything. While Trump continues his destructive trade war against Canada, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is set to attend the 47th ASEAN Summit next month, signaling a dramatic shift in Canada's economic strategy away from its traditional dependence on the United States. This isn't just diplomatic theater. This is Canada actively seeking new partners, while Trump's America becomes increasingly isolated and unreliable. The timing couldn't be more significant as Trump escalates his punitive tariffs against Canada. Carney has made it crystal clear at the United Nations that Canada will not be bullied. His declaration that Canada is no longer dependent on the United States represents a fundamental break from decades of economic integration, pushing America's most reliable ally to diversify away from the United States.
Hard. His message was unmistakable and directed squarely at Donald Trump. Canada will not be bullied, it will not be pushed aside, and it will thrive regardless of threats or pressure. Carney's press conference sent a message loud and clear to UN member states. Canada is no longer dependent on the United States. He reminded the world that Canada is forging new trade partnerships across Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The lesson of Trump's trade war, Carney argued, was simple. Canada will never again allow itself to be cornered by a single partner. But he didn't stop there. Carney announced that Canada is doubling its defense spending and broadening its security.
The strategic repositioning goes far deeper than just trade agreements. Carney has outlined a comprehensive vision for why Canada can thrive in this new global environment, emphasizing three critical factors that set Canada apart from Trump's increasingly isolated America. Canada has what the world needs most.
I think we can thrive, and I choose that word advisedly, thrive in this new non-system, or the system that's evolving, for three reasons. And the first is we have what the world wants. Take on the energy side, we are an energy superpower. That is going to become increasingly evident. 85% of our energy is clean. We're one of the world's largest LNG exporters, one of the largest reserves of oil and gas. We measure additions to our grid in 10 gigawatt chunks, to put it in perspective, and you will see that with time. We are top 5 in 10 of the world's most important critical minerals. 40% of the world's listed mining companies are in Canada, to give a perspective there. We are a leading developer of AI, and our research universities are some of the biggest producers in volume of AI, computing, and quantum talent in the world. Unfortunately, most of them go to the United States. I understand you're changing your visa policy here, so you're going to hang on to a few of those. We have capital. Our pension funds are some of, if not the most sophisticated infrastructure investors in the world, with all due respect to Larry Fink. And our government, we were talking about him earlier. I have lots of respect for Larry Fink, I should say that. And we have a government that still has fiscal capacity to act.
The country possesses energy superpower status with vast reserves of clean energy potential, critical minerals essential for the global technology transition, and cutting-edge AI development capabilities that rival any nation on Earth. These aren't just resources, they're the foundation of 21st century economic power that Trump's backward-looking policies are squandering for America. Carney's approach to international relations stands in stark contrast to Trump's chaotic bullying. At the Global Progress Action Summit in London, Carney explained how his government is reinvesting counter-tariff revenue directly into Canadian companies and workers, giving Canadians a sense of agency in an uncertain world.
It was a rare occurrence for Mark Carney, the new politician spending part of the morning here in London reflecting on the political strategy he took to win the election. While he spent almost all of the campaign focusing on Donald Trump, he didn't mention him by name during a panel here at the Global Progress Action Summit, an annual meeting of left-leaning leaders, instead saying Canadians felt like they lost control of their economic situation and saying that his plan to fight back against U.S. tariffs and reinvesting counter-tariff money into Canadian companies and workers made Canadians feel they had agency of the situation.
This pragmatic approach to governance shows how real leaders respond to economic challenges, not with Twitter tantrums and threats, but with strategic planning and support for their citizens. Meanwhile, Trump's erratic behavior continues to alienate allies and undermine American interests. At his recent UN speech, Trump delivered a rambling 56-minute address warning countries about green energy policies, declaring that if you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail.
As Trump criticizes the UN, we break down whether it's still living up to its promise. Jimmy Kimmel returns to late night days after being pulled off the air. And what CBC News has learned about the future of Marineland's famous belugas and where they could go next.
It's not as simple as just calling up FedEx to say, hey, I've got a shipment for you. Overnight, please.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault at the United Nations in New York.
Thanks for joining us here at the United Nations as the world gathers and Donald Trump takes center stage. The theme of this 80th UN General Assembly is Better Together, but in a 56-minute-long speech dripping with self-praise and boastful claims, Trump took sharp aim at this institution and many of its member countries. He targeted migration and green energy, the recognition of a Palestinian state, and the state of the UN building itself. He chided the group for being ineffective, but also later signaled support. And the list goes on. Off that stage, the news keeps coming. We will dig into Trump's shift in tone on Ukraine in a minute. But first, Chris Reyes takes us into that moment and that room as the U.S. president grabbed the world's attention.
Donald Trump's return to the United Nations got off to a bumpy start. This broken escalator working its way into his grievances at the podium.
I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle.
For nearly an hour, Trump bounced between lecturing world leaders
Your countries are going to hell.
and offering to help fix their problems, urging them to enforce strict borders and abandon green policies.
If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail.
And he admonished countries like Canada that recognize the Palestinian state.
The rewards would be too great for Hamas.
This delusional stance on clean energy comes as Canada positions itself as a global leader in the technologies that will define the next century. Canada's International Trade and Secretary of State Minister Yasir Naqvi confirmed that Carney will attend the ASEAN summit as Malaysia's guest, marking his first major Asian diplomatic mission since taking office. But here's what Trump doesn't understand. This visit represents everything his failed trade war has accomplished, pushing America's most reliable ally to build economic relationships that don't include the United States. The number, as tell the story Trump doesn't want to hear. The Canada-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, which both sides are working to conclude by the end of next year, is expected to generate massive economic benefits. For Canada, the FTA could increase GDP by $2.5 billion US dollars. For ASEAN, the boost could reach $6 billion US dollars. These aren't small numbers. These are the kinds of economic gains that Trump's trade war is directly costing American businesses and workers. Trump's tariff tantrums have created exactly the opposite of what he claimed to want. Instead of making America stronger, his trade war is forcing Canada to build new economic relationships across the Pacific. Investment and Trade Minister Tunku Datuk Seri Zafrul Abdul Aziz made it clear that ASEAN's main focus is finalizing this agreement with Canada, calling it a priority that could reshape trade relationships across the region. The irony is devastating for Trump's America First agenda. While he wages economic warfare against Canada, a country that has been America's largest trading partner and most reliable ally, Carney is building bridges with some of the world's fastest-growing economies. ASEAN represents over 650 million people and includes economic powerhouses like Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, and Malaysia. This represents a fundamental shift that Trump's chaotic trade policies have accelerated. For decades, Canada's economy has been deeply integrated with the United States. More than 75% of Canadian exports traditionally went south of the border. But Trump's repeated tariff threats, his insulting comments about making Canada the 51st state, and his general hostility toward Canadian sovereignty have forced Canada to look elsewhere. Carney's attendance at the ASEAN summit isn't just about one trade deal, it's about Canada positioning itself for a post-American economic future. The Prime Minister has been clear about this strategic shift, emphasizing that Canada must diversify its trading relationships to protect itself from the kind of economic bullying that Trump has made his signature approach to international relations. The Canada-ASEAN relationship has been building for nearly 5 decades, but Trump's trade war has given it new urgency and importance. What started as a diplomatic relationship has evolved into a comprehensive economic partnership that could provide Canada with the economic security that Trump's America can no longer guarantee. Trump's supporters might claim this is all part of his negotiating strategy, but the results speak for themselves. Canada isn't coming back to the negotiating table begging for mercy. Instead, Carney is building alternative relationships that reduce Canada's dependence on the unpredictable and increasingly hostile United States. The ASEAN summit represents something Trump fundamentally doesn't understand about international relations, that trust and reliability matter more than threats and tariffs. While Trump burns bridges with America's closest allies, those allies are building new bridges with each other. 8 ASEAN countries are already trading with Canada through the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Trump famously withdrew the United States from the original version of this agreement, leaving American businesses and workers out of one of the world's largest free trade zones. Now Canada is deepening those relationships even further. Tengku Zafrul emphasized that ASEAN has requested Canada to be more flexible in the FTA talks, and early indications suggest that Canada is responding positively. This kind of constructive diplomacy stands in stark contrast to Trump's approach of ultimatums and threats. The global economy is shifting, and Trump's trade wars are accelerating changes that will leave America more isolated and less influential. While Trump focuses on punishing traditional allies like Canada, those allies are finding new partners and building new relationships that don't include the United States. Carney's visit to the ASEAN summit is a direct result of Trump's failed trade strategy. By making the United States an unreliable partner, Trump has pushed Canada toward Asia. By threatening Canadian sovereignty, he's forced Canada to seek economic independence from American markets. By breaking trade agreements and imposing arbitrary tariffs, he's demonstrated that America's word cannot be trusted. The Canada-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement represents more than just a trade deal. It's a symbol of how Trump's America First policies are actually putting America last. While Trump wages trade wars, Canada is building the economic relationships that will define the next generation of global commerce. This is the real cost of Trump's trade war, not just the immediate economic damage from tariffs and retaliation, but the long-term strategic realignment that's pushing America's closest allies toward new partners. Canada's pivot to Asia isn't temporary. It's a permanent shift that will outlast Trump's presidency and leave America weaker and more isolated. The ASEAN summit next month will be a milestone in this transformation. As Carney works to finalize new trade relationships with some of the world's most dynamic economies, Trump will be left to explain to American businesses and workers why his trade war strategy has pushed one of America's most important economic partners into the arms of competitors. Trump's trade war isn't making America great again. It's making America irrelevant. And Canada's successful pivot to Asia is proving that America's traditional allies don't need to accept Trump's economic bullying. They can find new partners, build new relationships, and create new opportunities that leave Trump's America behind. The 47th ASEAN Summit represents the future of international trade, multilateral, cooperative, and built on trust rather than threats. It's everything Trump's approach is not, and everything America is losing because of his failed leadership on the global stage.